people like me. You need people like me so you can point your f***ing fingers and say, that's the bad guy.
The undisputed super featherweight champion of the world, Alicia, the Baumgardner.
That's the bad guy. That's the bad guy. That's the bad guy. That's the bad guy.
Welcome to the motherfucking relay. We're covering today's top boxing news.
Okay, we'll start with this per tweet from International Boxing News. It appears that Eddie Hearn has named Erica Cruz, former WBA featherweight champion Erica Cruz, and former two-time WBO super lightweight champion Christina Linardatou as potential opponent options for Alicia Baumgardner, who's set to return to action in July in defense of her undisputed crown. What that means is that either Erica would have to move up or Christina Linardatou would have to move down.
Those are tough fights.
Both of them. Those are tough fights for an economic pure boxer like Alicia Baumgardner. Lest we forget, Christina Linardatou is the only woman to ever beat Alicia Baumgardner. Christina, like Erica, she's a pressure fighter.
Pressure fighters have a stylistic advantage over pure boxers. At least stylistically they do, because they're polar opposites. Where the pure boxer wants to fight a slow and controlled fight at a controlled pace, economic, from a safe distance,
the pressure fighter's the opposite. They want to let the fists fly. They want to get in their wheelhouse. They want to let them go.
that's what they want.
And that's the advantage. Where the pure boxer might need the room and the real estate, the space to sharpshoot and pick their punches, the pressure fighter won't let them.
There is an emphasis on accuracy among pure boxers. That's why they're economic. They don't waste their punches.
Maybe only 1 and 2 shots at a time, but they're accurate shots.
Whereas pressure fighters, they just want to hit you. They don't care
The
where.
head, the body, your arms, your gloves, they just want to hit you.
They don't care where.
There's an emphasis on form among pure boxers. Very neat and tidy, very textbook, whereas pressure fighters, they can be very awkward, like Erica Cruz, who's quite unconventional. Very awkward fighter with an awkward style. Messy, but effective.
Like what you see from Jessica McCaskill upstairs at welterweight. She's a pressure fighter too, just like Erica.
When it comes to Erica and Christina Linardatou, Christina, who's a pressure fighter as well, she is, but there are subtle differences between them, nuances. The pressure you get from Erica is a little bit more constant than what you get from Christina. From Christina, what you get is explosivity.
She's very sudden.
Very explosive, what one would describe as an ambush fighter.
Strong one.
Better form than Erica Cruz, though, not as awkward.
With Erica, what you get is a more crude operator. Not as much form and function, but a lot of pressure.
And a lot of head clashes. The way that Erica leads with her face, leads with her head, leans in when she brings over big hooks. That makes for head clashes mid-range to inside.
Advertently or inadvertently, it happens.
The pressure's more constant, too.
Or steady.
Whereas with Christina, it's sudden. She fights in bursts, throws big shots, and she's very strong.
Powerful.
Very athletic and exhibiting better form and better punch picking than Erica Cruz.
Better form. She's got better form than Erica, though not a better engine. Christina Linardatou, because she loads up on every punch, she tires.
Whereas Erica Cruz hails from high altitude Mexico City. Many fighters from that region, you'll notice, they've got great engines. They can throw punches in bunches from the opening round to the final round.
One of Erica's virtues. She's tough as nails and she's got an engine.
Better cardio than Christina Linardatou perhaps, but not as strong, not as powerful.
Christina's the bigger puncher.
She puts everything in those shots.
All of it.
There's a very good marketing angle for either fight. You know, if Alicia fights Christina for the second time, that's her chance to avenge her lone loss, her lone defeat to Christina many years ago. That's if she fights Christina. If she fights Erica, she gets the chance to fight a common opponent between her and Amanda Serrano.
The who did it better angle. If she goes in there and actually stops Erica Cruz, or at minimum handles her better than Amanda.
That's a marketing angle. So there is a virtue in either choice, either opponent, either Erica Cruz or Christina Linardatou. Erica is naturally smaller than Christina Linardatou, smaller than Alicia Baumgardner.
Shorter and stumpier, but very stubborn and very durable.
I've seen Alicia Baumgardner tire in fights. I've seen Christina Linardatou tire in fights, whereas Erica's got an engine, man. She can really go.
But the caveat is that she is naturally smaller than Alicia and Christina.
Comes to Christina, she'd have to move down in weight for this fight. You know, when she was supposed to fight Michaela Mayer a couple of weeks ago, that was supposed to go down at lightweight, whereas this being a defense of the undisputed crown, this would require Christina to go down even further, down to 130 pounds.
A byproduct of the BBBOC refusing to license Christina Linardatou.
Still don't understand why they refused to license her on the premise of her having a permanent lens in one of her eyes. That's the same lens she had in her eye when she fought Katie Taylor in the United Kingdom. Inexplicable.
But that's what happened. Perhaps a blessing in disguise, because that fight with Michaela, it wasn't for no belts. This is for all the belts.
All the belts, all the marbles at 130 pounds, and she can go into this fight confident that she's beaten Alicia before, and perhaps she can beat her again.
That mental edge, that she's not in unfamiliar territory.
I like either fight. I like either fight for the super featherweight division's undisputed queen, though heavy is the head that wears the crown.
Alicia's got to stay on her P's and Q's. You can't be asleep at the wheel with these kinds of fighters.
These are the kind of fighters that physically, they're going to push you, and you have to be up for it.
Because they're not going to lay off. They're not going to leave you alone.
Men's middleweight news, you might have already heard that Chris Eubank Jr. versus Liam Smith is official. The rematch is set to go down June 17th at the AO Arena in Manchester.
This wasn't Chris's first choice.
The rematch with Liam, he was ready to put that on the back burner to revisit the Conor Benn fight somewhere in the Middle East, but BBBOC put their foot down. They're not going to allow British fighters or any fighter with a British boxing license to box Conor Benn without the threat of penalty.
Boxing him requires their approval, and Robert Smith made it clear that they're not likely to approve Chris Eubank Jr. fighting Conor Benn.
So here we are. Chris Eubank Jr. decided to go ahead and fight Liam Smith for a second time. In truth, I am expecting a better Chris Eubank Jr., a more well-prepared Chris Eubank Jr. than the one I saw the first time out. The first time out, I anticipated that this fight, Liam Smith, his style, that mid-range to inside fighter style, it's right up Chris Eubank Jr.'s alley. It's what we saw in the Liam Williams fight. Liam Williams, a common opponent between Chris and Liam Smith.
I expected that this fight was going to look like that fight, and it didn't.
Well, it did up until the knockout, up until Chris Eubank Jr. was stopped. Chris Eubank Jr., who going into that fight had a reputation for having a cast iron jaw. This is a guy with a good beard, guy who can take a punch, and somehow Liam Smith, who's more adequately suited to campaign as a junior middleweight than a middleweight, he was the first to stop Chris Eubank Jr.
Wow.
I think the two camps.
There was a lot of talk after the fight about Liam Smith getting an elbow in there.
But I happen to think if Chris Eubank Jr.'s punch resistance was sapped, it wasn't simply the elbow that may or may not have gotten in. It was because he went through two camps. A big weight cut for what was supposed to be the Conor Benn fight that never materialized, and the subsequent camp that followed for the Liam Smith fight. I think Chris Eubank Jr. was depleted.
There's no such thing as a free lunch. Everything costs.
The boxing fans at large may not realize that the camps themselves, the camps in preparation for a match, take something out of a fighter as well. It's not just the fight, it's not just the fighting, it's also the camps in the build-up of a fight.
I'm not making excuses for Chris. Hell, I don't even like Chris Eubank Jr., but if I had to guess why this guy who can normally take a punch all of a sudden has a glass jaw,
I think it was the two camps. I think the camp for the Conor Benn fight, what was supposed to be the Conor Benn fight, that really took something out of Chris Eubank Jr. That fight doesn't materialize, they set this one up, and that subsequent camp, it took a little more out of Chris to where the first solid shot that gets in, he can't weather it, he can't take it.
I wonder what Roy's strategy for Chris is going to be in this rematch. What will they change?
I don't know here and now, but on the face of it, I do expect a more well-prepared Chris Eubank Jr. than the one we saw the first time out. Perhaps he was too cavalier with Liam Smith. Let's be honest. It felt like they brought Liam Smith there to lose.
They were expecting what we were expecting, that this fight is going to look a lot like the Liam Williams fight, because they have their similarities. They're both gutting and gritty fighters, mid-range to inside guys.
Felt like they brought Liam there to lose. The last thing that I expected was that not only would Liam win, but he'd win by way of knockout.
Boxing's full of surprises.
The theater of the unexpected. And now Chris has the experiences from the first fight to draw from in preparation for the rematch. Rematches are often won.
They're often won by the fighter that can make the most adjustments. Is that Chris?
Chris struck me as a fighter who was caught between styles. The fighter that he was before he enlisted the aid of Roy Jones Jr. and the fighter that he became after that.
Diet Roy.
Can he get the job done opposite the ring Liam Smith for the second time in June? Will this turn out to be a trilogy? Will we see 3 fights with these guys? And you know, if Liam Smith is fighting Chris Eubank Jr. for a second time, he's not fighting Tim Tszyu. A few weeks ago, talked about it here on the channel, there were some initial reports of talks for a Tim Tszyu versus Liam Smith fight. Now, obviously, those talks went nowhere since Liam is fighting Chris again. There was also a report a little over a week ago, maybe 2, maybe 3, that Tim Tszyu was exploring the possibility of a Michael Zerafa fight. That reportedly, Michael Zerafa was offered $2.5 million to box Tim Tszyu for his WBO interim title, interim at junior middleweight.
That was per IFL TV.
Tim Tszyu's worth some money down there in Australia. He's promoted by No Limit Promotions, a very well-to-do promotional outfit in Australia. And at least based on reports, this would have been the second time that Michael Zerafa would have walked away from a Tim Tszyu fight. The first time was a little over a year ago.
It was close to 2. Michael Zerafa walked away from the Tim Tszyu fight and Stevie Sparks stood in his place.
So, you know, Tim's not fighting Liam Smith. He's not fighting Michael Zerafa. I believe that Michael is currently in talks to face Erslandy Lara for Erslandy's newly obtained WBA title at middleweight. That might have a lot to do with why he's not boxing Tim Tszyu.
That rhymed.
But you know, Tim could always box somebody like Bakram Murtazaliev, what's supposed to be the IBF's mandatory challenger at junior middleweight. He could always box that guy. He could always box that Mendoza kid that just knocked out Sebastian Fundoria. That big shock upset loss.
Box that guy.
See if you can't finagle a situation to where a dual mandatory is crowned. Because, you know, Tim Tszyu, he's the mandatory challenger to Jermel Charlo by way of the WBO. The Mendoza kid is the mandatory challenger by way of the WBC. The WBC interim title that he just won from Sebastian Fundora. So what if you do a fight between those 2 guys to crown a dual mandatory? It's been done before. Daniel Roman, down there at 122 pounds. He was the dual mandatory for Stephen Fulton.
By way of the WBC and the WBO, the same sanctioning bodies we're talking about here. It can be done. It has been done.
And it's just a suggestion. Another possible opponent for Tim Tszyu is former WBO champion Brian Castano, who isn't busy with a whole lot right now, not even a tentative fight date. He hasn't fought since the Jermel Charlo fight, the Jermel Charlo rematch over a year ago. What about fighting that guy?
It's not like the PBC and Showtime are keeping him busy.
He's a very exciting fighter with a very fan-friendly style, good amateur background, solid, and he's nobody's patsy. He's no pushover. But they don't got that guy doing much right now. I don't think Showtime has it in the budget to accommodate all of these fighters. So maybe he can take a trip to Australia, box Tim Tszyu.
Go fight that guy.
I've said it before and I'll say it again. I don't actually think the Tszyu versus Charlo fight is going to happen. It's been well over a year's time since Jermel had a fight, and it's less than ideal to fight somebody like a Tim Tszyu. Off of that kind of layoff, coming off of what's supposed to be hand surgery.
I just don't think it's going to happen. If it does, then great, but
doesn't look like that's going to be Tim Tszyu's very next fight. Tim Tszyu, who's coming off a highlight reel knockout win over former WBC champion Tony Harrison.
Highlight reel knockouts Tim Tszyu's racking up over experienced fighters, very experienced fighters. They only add to his marketability, add to his profile.
I don't know here and now who he's going to be facing in his very next fight.
But I look forward to it because that kid's fights, they don't disappoint. They're action-packed and he finishes strong.
And finally, in men's lightweight news, per tweet from Michael Benson, Devin Haney on what he's expecting from Vasyl Lomachenko, a dirty fight. He is a dirty fighter. He has skills, don't get me wrong, but he relies a lot on dirty tactics. Stop training for that dirty shit. Give me a fair fight. I know you want to fight dirty, but it won't work. And, you know, these comments struck me as odd because Vasyl Lomachenko is not what I would describe as a dirty fighter. There are some dirty tactics. Roughhouse veteran tactics that fighters employ in the clinch. You know, hitting a guy low when the ref doesn't see it.
Closing the distance on an opponent dipping down and coming up head first in order to hit him with the top of your head.
Holyfield used to do that a lot. People accuse Josh Warrington of deliberate clashes of heads. In the clinch, putting your elbow on the guy's throat.
Yeah.
These are dirty tactics.
Yeah.
Fighters use them.
Yeah.
But I've not seen Vasyl Lomachenko deliberately hit a guy low or deliberately hit a guy with his head. I've not seen Vasyl Lomachenko stick his elbow in a guy's throat. I mean, I don't see him do these things. So when Devin Haney accuses him of being a dirty fighter, dirty in what way? I think the most questionable thing I've seen Vasyl Lomachenko do, which it turns out is perfectly legal, is pull a guy's hand down.
When a guy's in a high guard, it's not uncommon to see Vasyl Lomachenko stick his arm out, put the guy's hand down, and place a punch in there.
It's not uncommon. He does that, but it's not illegal either. It's not a dirty tactic. It's not dirty boxing.
Dirty boxing is more akin to stepping on a guy's lead foot.
Sometimes it happens on purpose, sometimes it happens by accident, but it does happen. And that's more akin to dirty boxing than pulling a guy's guard down.
That's not dirty boxing. That's perfectly legal.
Some would describe Devin Haney's clinching as dirty boxing, his smothering tactics, which we often see in the sport of boxing. It's not something that's exclusive to Devin Haney. Those fighters that are not as comfortable or capable mid-range to inside, they employ smothering tactics. They'll tie the guy up.
Stop his momentum. Don't let him land no punches.
What we saw Caleb Plant doing to David Benavidez in the second half of their fight when exhaustion started to set in. And we do see Devin Haney at times. When a guy makes it past his laser jab, he'll tie the guy up so he don't get to land no punches.
Devin, being more of a long-range, long-distance fighter, he likes to fight downwind of his opponent. He's not really a mid-range to inside guy.
He's actually vulnerable there. Thus, the smothering tactics, they are warranted. But those smothering tactics are more akin to dirty boxing than anything you see from Vasyl Lomachenko. What dirty boxing does he employ?
Devin ain't got to get himself ready for no dirty boxing. What he does have to get himself ready for are pivots and shifts. Vasyl Lomachenko playing at the angles to try to hit him from the blind spots.
It's a signature for Vasyl Lomachenko. A sudden shift, a sudden pivot to get to the side of the guy, put a punch in there when the guy don't see it.
And that's not dirty boxing either. That's the name of the game. Hitting a guy with shots he don't see, shots he can't brace himself for. Those are the shots that'll take you out.
Those are the shots Devin Haney has to prepare himself for, as well as his gas tank, his engine. Good cardio will be necessary in this fight because, if nothing else, if you manage to turn with Vasyl Lomachenko as he pivots to keep him in front of you, he's going to do this often enough that's going to start to wear on your gas tank.
That's what he did to Jermaine Ortiz. Jermaine Ortiz started all right, but he was fading down the stretch due to the pace of the fight.
It's yet another aspect of this fight that Devin has to get himself ready for, that as the fight progresses, Vasyl Lomachenko may up the tempo to tire him out. Devin Haney, he's a pure boxer. He fights at a slow, controlled pace, only 1 or 2 punches at a time. If you let Loma have his way,
He's gonna push you.
push the envelope, press the issue, and that's forcing you to work.
Perhaps more than you'd like.
Maybe you could give the edge in speed to Devin Haney. Maybe. I mean, Vasyl Lomachenko's quick, but he's not as young as he used to be, though. The edge in power, that has to go to Vasyl Lomachenko. He's a bigger puncher than Devin Haney, even if he is a naturally smaller fighter.
It's a fascinating fucking fight.
It's a fascinating fucking fight. No catch weights, no rehydration clauses, just high-level boxing.